Hello everyone, welcome back to our Wikipedia assignment. This week we are focusing on week 5. So as always, we're going to go to our dashboard.wikiedu.org. You'll just see this one, the history of sociological theory. Log in, and then we're going to go to timeline. You can scroll down or click on week 5 on the sidebar here. And this week we are really focusing on starting to draft our contributions and actually writing the article that we're expanding on, and the article that you've chosen. This week has a big emphasis on plagiarism. I know as university students you have talked a lot about plagiarism and academic integrity in your courses. However, it's really wise to go over plagiarism again. Many of you understand plagiarism as the exact copying of someone else's work, but this module is going to do a really good job at explaining of how close paraphrasing is also considered plagiarism. So please read this in depth. It's not very long, but it's important. So I'm going to click over here, start from the introduction. You're going to go through all of these. You can watch this video, please do. Okay, and so it breaks it down into 3 basic types of plagiarism. Unattributed plagiarism, where you copy text and you don't credit the author. Plagiarism of cited sources, where you copy text exactly, even when you credit the author, so if you go word for word. And close paraphrasing, where you just slightly change the text of another author, cited or not. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. So unattributed plagiarism, you know what that is. It's when you're taking someone's ideas and making them your own. Plagiarism of a cited source it means passing off someone else's words as your own. So even with proper credit, so even if you cited, say, Dr. Dickinson, using full passages from an author's work is considered plagiarism. Close paraphrasing. So when you find good information for a Wikipedia article, you'll want to put it into your own words. Make sure the words and structure of the information you share are substantially different from the source it came from. So I'm going to show you an example of close paraphrasing, and this is really important to understand. So I want you to look here. The original text is, because the weather forecast called for rain, the league decided to switch the location of the game to an indoor facility. Now, this is an example of plagiarism underneath. It is not identical to the sentence. However, just a few words and the syntax of the sentence has changed. So the league switched the game's location to an indoor facility due to a weather forecast calling for rain. This is unacceptable. This is plagiarism. Close paraphrasing, where you're just changing different parts of the sentence, what order things come in just a word. So for example, but if you come down here to acceptable text, you're still communicating the same information. The league moved the match indoors to avoid forecasted rain. You're still giving the same information, however, the syntax and the word choice is yours. It is not borrowed from the original. So be really careful about that. So even changing a few words and flipping your sentence is unacceptable. That is considered plagiarism. So you're going to avoid close paraphrasing. So here are some tips, because sometimes it's not always purposeful or malicious. However, it's something as students and grad students and professionals that you are going to have to be very aware of and to catch yourself. So it says find a few different sources and take your notes in your own writing. This is really important. I think a lot of us get used to copy and pasting into documents, and sometimes that can create problems because we forget to add quotation marks, we forget where it has come from, and we don't attribute it correctly. So it's important to read those sources. You can even mark down where you'd like to go back to cite directly. However, taking notes in your own writing is good policy because it also helps you summarize and pinpoint what you think is the main information of the article. And it's going to make it easier when you go to write your Wikipedia expansion. Don't write your article with your original sources open in front of you. So you're going to take notes on those sources. So you're going to read them, you're going to take sources on them, and from your notes that are written in your own words, they would recommend writing the article. And then when you're done, you can reread the article and make sure that you're making attributions, to the proper sources. And you can also take notes by really jotting down key concepts from your sources instead of the phrases. So close paraphrasing quiz, you're going to take this. Take a look at this original fictional passage, then look at the options below. Choose the one you think is an acceptable way to present the information on Wikipedia. So let's go through this together, both because it's good practice and because I can't continue the module without doing the quiz. So passage. In 1967, only 25% of eligible Boston voters supported a measure to limit the space afforded to keeping cattle in the city. Dr. Bickford's research suggests that this was on account of the confusing language on the ballot measure, and that support for the measure would have been higher had the memorandum been more clearly stated on the ballot. How would you share this information in a Wikipedia article? So if this was your reliable source, how would you synthesize this information in a way that wasn't plagiarizing? There is only one correct answer here. So in 1967, a quarter of votes approved a measure limiting the space for cattle in Boston. Some researchers suggest this was a result of a confusing memorandum, and that more voters would have supported limiting grazing spaces if the ballot was more clear. I'm going to say no, because you can, if you look here, only a few changes are made between the original and the written. So in 1967, only 25%, a quarter of votes. So they're just changing slight things, but you can see that it has the same syntax and mostly the same words. So Dr. Bickford wrote that 25% of eligible Boston voters supported a measure to limit the space afforded to cattle rearing in urban spaces. Bickford's research concluded that the 1967 support for cattle grazing in Boston was a result of confused voters and unclear balloting questions. Most Boston voters couldn't understand the ballot questions, so most voted in favor of limiting the space cattle could use to graze in the city. I'm going to go here because I think it conveys the date and the content the best. Let's see here. Yahoo! Correct. So this is a good example of how to present information on Wikipedia, provided that you still cite the original text in the references section. So here you should still have an inline citation that you should add. If you can't remember how to do that, please go over in your modules how to insert an inline citation. Because even though this is now in your own words, it still has to be attributed to your source. So have a good look at that. Copyright is a free resource that anyone can use. But in fact, because anyone can copy and reuse Wikipedia's content, you cannot upload any material that isn't explicitly uncopyrighted. Quotations. You've noticed that there are many ways for writing Wikipedia that's different than in traditional academic paper. So in general, quotations in Wikipedia aren't very helpful. So instead of quoting from the author himself, you really need to ask yourself, what is your argument for quoting this directly instead of paraphrasing it? In some cases, it is best to directly quote. So say if like a famous speech, 7 years ago, that famous Abraham Lincoln speech from the United States, it's probably better to quote directly. But if it's a sentence that you can convey in your own words, you should do that. Remove content. Whether you're working on an existing article, which you are, when you come across a clear example of plagiarism, you need to delete it. And that's helping Wikipedia keep its articles both up to date as well as improving the integrity of the articles. And this can tell you how to do that. So we're going to review. Plagiarism quiz. Which of the following is not considered a form of plagiarism when writing Wikipedia articles? Copy text and don't credit author? No. Copy text exactly and credit the author in a footnote? No. Slightly changing the text of another author, cited or not, but keeping the same structure? No. Taking information from a source and contributing to Wikipedia using your own words, but citing the original source as a reference? Yay. Yes. And that's important to understand. Take a minute, stop, and look at the differences between these. And you'll make sure you understand why these are unacceptable and how they are considered plagiarism. What's a good principle for avoiding plagiarism? Using your own words to explain concepts and ideas is important, so you don't have to cite the original author. No. Find clear, well written, and reliable sources and quote them as closely as possible while referencing the source of the information. No. Draw from sources to understand concepts, facts, and figures. Explain the information in your own words and provide clear references to where the information came from. I think this is the one, but we'll read one more. Because anyone can copy and reuse Wikipedia's content, the more information you copy directly from books, magazines, and other sources of knowledge, the better the world becomes. I'm going to go with this answer. Last one, I think. No, there's 2 more pages. Imagine you've been editing your article and someone flags a recent contribution as being plagiarized. Based on your understanding from this and other online trainings about Wikipedia, what should you do? Assume the author has a vendetta? After all, you know you're an honest person. You would never plagiarize. Ignore the Wikipedian and add the content back. No. Review your contribution and compare it to the original source. See what's similar and how you can rephrase it to use less of the original structure or words, then add it back in. Assume the source is copyrighted and can't be used on Wikipedia. Find a different source that isn't copyrighted. Delete your Wikipedia account because you've been blacklisted as a plagiarist. So I'm going to go with reviewing the contribution. So again, it's kind of being a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but remember that plagiarism is not always malicious and it's not always intentional, especially when we're really trying to avoid close paraphrasing. So don't get worried, don't get concerned. It's not going to be flagged. It's not going to be a straight 0 on the assignment. These things happen. You just need to make the edits necessary. And that's it. There is a handout you can click and download. Please do so. We're going to carry on with the rest of week 5. So the rest of week 5 is drafting in the sandbox. So we're going to click on this. So in the module, we're going to learn how to draft in our sandbox. So you've picked a topic and you found your sources. You should have finished these at this point. You should be pretty certain, you should absolutely know your topic, and you should be pretty certain about the sources you're going to use to expand that step. And now it's time to start writing. So in the training, it's going to show us how to use the sandbox to draft those changes to an article. So we're going to go to the next page. What is a sandbox? So we did go over sandboxes briefly in our sandboxes, talk pages, and watch list training. And it's basically just your own personal wiki page where you can practice editing, plan out work, draft articles, or just experiment. So it's like a blank Wikipedia article. And you have all the same tools so you can fiddle around with it and see how you can improve what you are working on. But anyone can still see your sandbox. It's not anonymous, so it's important that your content you put on there is something that would be appropriate for others to see. And this is really important. So we talked about not copy and pasting from your sources into your notes because it can create confusion later on. It is also important that you do not copy and paste things that might violate copyright rules or are word for word from another source into your sandbox. So that will be considered plagiarism. Even though you haven't published it on the new page, having a source quoted word for word or too closely paraphrased counts as plagiarism. So please make sure that you are not copy and pasting from your sources into your sandbox. So how to find your sandbox. So define the sandbox for your assigned article. You're going to click the sandbox draft link for it from the My Article section of your dashboard course page. So let's go back to our dashboard. This is our dashboard. We're going to go home. And you're going to scroll down to your My Articles. So you're going to go to My Articles. Down here is the sandbox draft. You're going to click on that. And this is my sandbox draft. So we have the article I have pretended that I chose, social theory. And this is my little draft. I haven't started on it. We're going to go back here to the module. It says define a classmate's draft sandbox. Click on their username from the Students tab of your dashboard course. Then use the sandbox draft link. So to find a classmate's draft sandbox, you can click from the username. So you'd go here and you go to students. Nobody is enrolled yet, so it's going to be blank, but you can click on that. And then once you've clicked on that, you can use the sandbox draft link. And you can also share your sandbox URL with someone else. So if you are wanting to start collaborating with your classmates, you're more than welcome. You can find each other's sandboxes easily. So on Wikipedia, you can also reach a generic sandbox by clicking the sandbox link. You're not going to need to know how to do this, I think, for this assignment. You don't need to know how to create a new sandbox. The sandbox that you have is going to be for your chosen article. Don't worry about this. Editing an existing article. This is what we're doing. So if you're editing an existing article, a sandbox is a great place to prepare your first updates by copying a small portion of the article that you want to change or expand. Do not try to overhaul an entire article from the sandbox. Do not go and copy and paste the entire article into your sandbox. So at this point, you should have gone over the existing article and identified the parts that are missing from that article or what you want to add. So you're going to keep reading your sources as you prepare to write the body of the article. And when you're ready to write, you're going to open the article you want to change in edit mode. References and other templates will break if you copy from read mode. So let's take that first step. Open the article you want to change in edit mode. Okay. So we are in my social theory. And I'm going to go to my home page. And I'm going to click on article here. And it says go into edit mode. So you see this? We're on read mode. This is the normal mode that you're on when you log on to Wikipedia. We're going to edit mode. Okay, so once we're in edit mode, I'm going to copy just the lead section. So this is the lead. This is all I'm going to copy for now. This is the only exception about copy and pasting directly into your sandbox. You may copy and paste only from the article you're working on, no other sources. So this is the lead of that article. So I'm going to come back here and I'm going to paste it while I'm working on it. And this is where you can make changes. So you identify, okay, I'm going to take out this sentence of this, like that. And I think I'm going to add a sentence here about social theories are a main topic, etc., etc. So you're going to add the improvements you have here section by section. You can jump around sections, but make sure you're not copying and pasting the whole article at one time. And when you've done that, you're going to click publish page, and save changes and make an edit about what you have done. I'm not going to do that because then this is pretend. So second, select the portion you want to work on, which is what we did. A few paragraphs at most. So we did that here. We went into edit mode and we took the lead section and copy it. And then we opened our sandbox in edit mode. So this is our sandbox. It's currently in edit mode. Okay. And we pasted it. We're going to add an edit summary that says copied from, and then your article name with the name of the original article, and then you're going to save it and publish changes. And then you're going to re-enter edit mode in your sandbox, make your changes, and publish. So we're not drafting a new article. You can completely ignore this. And that's it. So again, I know it's a lot. Don't be anxious. I'm here to help you. If you have any questions, please ask me or Dr. Dickinson, or you can also ask the Wikipedia experts. So the Get Help. They're very helpful, and if we can't answer your questions, they will be able to. So if we go back down to week 5, that's it. So there's also this resource for editing Wikipedia. Please download it if you haven't downloaded yet. And at this point, everyone should be writing their article drafts. Good luck. And if you have any questions, please let me know or go to the Get Help button under, let's see, let me try to find it. I haven't tried to get help just yet. Right here. So this pops up at the very end. You can click Get Help and you're going to search, or you can ask a question here. All right. Good luck, and I will see you all next week.